Zachary Levi, welcome to Sports Spectrum. It's great to talk to you. How you doing?
I'm really well, thank you. How are you today?
I'm doing well. It's great to have you here. Let's start with sports because that's what we're about here. Sports and faith, obviously, on
Mhm.
Sports Spectrum. And we have a mutual friend, Andy Irwin, who helped direct and produce your movie, American Underdog. He and I were
Yeah.
talking about this interview. I shot him a text and said, "Hey, I'm talking to Zachary Levi. What should I know?" And he said, "You have to ask him about the Dodgers and you have to ask him about his love for off-road ATV sports." Here's the question, Zach. What do you
Oh,
think?
well, okay. Oh, well, the Dodgers are, I mean, they're my boys in blue. I mean, I grew up in Southern California. So
Yeah.
uh, Dodgers, Lakers, I mean, Kings, Ducks, Angels, Clippers. I mean, really everybody, but Dodgers, Lakers are really, really all my guys. And, um, what was it? 88 series, I think was it, Hershiser, Gibson. I mean, that was kind of the beginning of my love. And it was a long time coming to finally get that one, that one we got recently. But man, I think baseball is just it's America's pastime. It's always been America's pastime. But I have a lot of love for the Dodgers, and I've been to many games, and I've gotten to throw out a first pitch, and I've got to sing the national anthem, and so lots of rich history with that organization. And then off-road vehicles. Well, listen, he's telling you to ask about that because I don't know if he told you, but he came to my ranch, and I have this like a dune buggy, basically. I mean, it's a side by side. It's a Honda Talon 2-seater that's all souped up and real fun. And typically it's how I initiate people into their first trip at the ranch. And Andy may have soiled his pants. I don't know that for a fact, but he said he had a good time, but I think he was also terrified. So yes,
I'd probably be terrified too. It sounds like
Oh no, you'd be in good hands. I haven't tipped that thing once.
Attaboy. Well, that sounds good to me. I did want to ask you because it's sports, right? Your connection, and obviously Andy Irwin was one of the directors on your role
American Underdog.
on American Underdog, in your role as Kurt Warner. Now that movie's done and out and everybody's kind of seen it, what are your thoughts when you think back about playing that role and what that experience was like for you?
Oh man, it was such an honor. I mean, I love that I got. It was really God. I mean, like I wasn't even available for it originally. That I was pre-pandemic. I was off doing a bunch of other movies, and they were, spooling up American Underdog to happen. And then the pandemic happened, and everything shut down, and then everything shuffled, and then all of a sudden I was available to do the movie because it started spooling up faster than some of the other things I was going to do. Hmm. And John and Andy, I had known previously prior to that a bit, and they always kind of had an idea of maybe, what if Zach had played this role, and now I was available, and then they came to me. And look, I mean, I was a Kurt Warner fan since I saw all that going down in real time when I was 19 or so, whenever that was. And
yeah,
I was always a big fan of his, not just the amazing, incredible, miraculous Cinderella story that we got to watch happen in front of us, but that he was a man of faith, and that he was a good guy, and loved his wife and loved his kids. And I, once I signed on for the movie, then I got to spend time with him and Brenda, and they are exactly who you want them to be. They're just wonderful people. And I was really honored that I got to play a really good guy and tell that story to some people who, a lot of people already knew it, but they were still moved by the movie, which is great. And then a lot of people never knew the story, and they were even more kind of taken with it. And, we did pretty good. I mean, we're a small movie compared to a lot of the other things that we were opening up around, like Spider-Man and stuff like that, and but like with movies, a lot of movies nowadays, it's in those second markets. It's like, I can't tell you how many people I get texts from that are on a plane, and they're like watching the movie on the plane now. And then, sure enough, a couple hours later, I'll get, I cried. Why'd you make me cry? And I'm like, you're welcome. # sorry, not sorry. So it was a really cool project, and I'm really grateful that we got to do it. And I'm really proud of it. I think we made a great little movie.
Yeah, it was a great movie. Kurt's been on this show, and we've known Kurt for many years now, and obviously a man of faith. Your faith's really important. You talk a lot about your faith in your new book, Radical Love. We're going to talk about the book in a second. Let me just ask you about that faith, maybe its importance from a general term, its importance in your life right now.
Well, I mean, I think that, our spiritual philosophical underpinnings are kind of everything in life. I mean, all of my opinions, all of my thoughts, all of which are therefore, all of my actions, they're all still on a bedrock of what do I believe ultimately deep down? What do you believe that there's a God or not? If you do believe there's a God, what is the nature of that God? What does that God intend for this world, for your life, for the lives of others? How can you then therefore fit into that plan and allow open yourself to be available, to be used in whatever that plan is? Ever since I was a very small child, I grew up in a Christian-ish home. I mean, Christian is a very wide swath of definition, yes, particularly now. But my mom and dad divorced when I was young. I grew up with my mom. My dad was a bit more religious and liturgic, and church every Sunday, taught Bible, or would teach Sunday school to kids. Still does. I mean, well, he doesn't really. The pandemic changed a lot of things, but anyway, point is, singing in the worship team, going to church multiple times a week. I mean, he was very much that guy. My mom, on the other hand, was very anti-establishment, anti-authority, deeply spiritual, speaking in tongues, would have people over and, really get deep into all that stuff. And so I was raised around a lot of that and had I think a very interesting and deep appreciation for a lot of that stuff early on. But I got to 18 and I was like, I don't know that I believe any of this because I believe it. I know I believe it because my parents do, but I don't want to just believe something because my parents believe it. So I then journeyed really, starting after high school, I really just started journeying to have a deeper understanding of what my walk with God is and who God is and the nature of God and what is my relation to all of that and who did God create me to be. And that's been a never ending, as it will, never is this never ending amazing ride with twists and turns and ups and downs and, just trying to, become, my prayer every morning is help me to be the man that you've created me to be. I don't want to be anything other than that. And I fail at it all the time, as we all do. But I really do. Ever since I was 4, I've always believed, with the exception of when I really lost my faith in the book, and we'll talk about that. But, ever since I was 4, I knew that there was a God, and I knew that God loved me. And I knew that I wanted to go and love people and be a conduit of that love of God's. And I think that was always kind of imprinted on my heart. I love people genuinely. It breaks my heart when I see people acting out of fear and anger and hate. And that's so much of why I think this book, why I was passionate about writing it, because I don't really care about writing a memoir about myself. I haven't lived enough life to write an autobiography or anything. Or I've done some cool stuff, but not anything cool enough where it's like, oh, let me tell everybody about how cool my life is. Like, I don't care about that. Yeah. But if I can be authentic and vulnerable and open up about some struggles that I've had, and if that, using my platform, if that helps other people to feel more seen and heard and loved and understood and not so alone in their own mental health journeys, then by God, that's what I'm going to do. And really help to people to understand that, love is not just amplified like. It's not just, you really like something, then you love it. No, that's a feeling. That's the feeling of love, or being in love, if it's a romanticized version of that. But, Jesus was pretty clear about love over and over and over again. And, one of the things that it still boggles my mind, that it doesn't boggle my mind that the secular world doesn't adhere to it. But when I see people who do kind of subscribe to Christianity not going along with this scripture, it bums me out, which is, to love your enemy and pray for your persecutor. Yeah. I just don't see that happening a lot. And again, the followers of Jesus should be the ones that are exemplifying what that is, and hopefully bringing people who don't understand that message, showing them the power of what that means. And love doesn't mean just dropping every boundary and allowing somebody to just do whatever they want to. It doesn't mean, to forgive somebody doesn't mean to forget either. To forgive somebody doesn't mean, all right, well, I forgive you, now you can hurt me again. No, you can forgive and you can love, and you can actually still not like that person, and that's okay. You can forgive and you can love and still have plenty of boundaries between you and the unhealthy behaviors of these other people. That is not just okay, that's good. We are meant to do that. Jesus wasn't saying like, go love and, turn the other cheek and all that stuff. One might you could interpret or misinterpret, in my opinion, that means just be a doormat and be walked all over. No, that's not what it is. It's having the fortitude in yourself. First of all, and it starts with loving yourself. That's one of the biggest things I learned. I didn't, up until 37 years old, I didn't know that I didn't love myself. And that's sad. It broke my heart when I figured that out, but I never learned it. I mean, how could you possibly know how to love yourself if your parents didn't exemplify that or really love you in all the healthiest of possible ways? And so it made sense once I broke all that down. But, to love ourselves firmly and truly, and to accept that we are these miracles, that we're walking around. Even if you don't believe in God, you're a miracle. You're still this life force that is life is a miracle. Every blade of grass, every puppy, every cat, every falcon, every whatever, every human, we're all these miracles walking around on this ball of mud spinning around in the middle of the universe. And we still, despite all of our efforts to find life somewhere else in the galaxy or the universe or anywhere else, we still haven't been able to find it. Now, granted, we're limited in our capacities and there's still vast amounts of space that we haven't touched yet, but we've seen a lot. Yeah. These people, these scientists are looking all over the place and they can't find anything. So even up to the point that we're at right now, we're still a mathematical miracle, even if you don't believe in a God. So let's start treating ourselves and each other like the miracles that we are. And yes, some people, they come into this world and as children, we're all products of our environment at the end of the day. And if we can see that, if we can see the 5-year-old child in every single person, our enemies and our persecutors, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to go, okay, you know what? I radically accept that you are where you are in your life. I don't agree with it. I don't condone it. I think what you're doing might be very wrong. You might even be evil, but I am not going to dehumanize you. I'm not going to vilify you. I'm not going to call you a monster. I'm not going to attack you with shame, which is the opposite of everything Jesus stood for. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to radically accept that you are a product of your environment, and I'm going to radically forgive you, not forget, not allow you to hurt me anymore, but I will forgive you because I go, oh, wow, you're operating not because you want to do this, but because this is the way you were brought up in the world, and I'm going to radically love you. Still have boundaries. Still, by the way, there's consequences to our actions. We can still hold people accountable. There is still accountability and responsibility, but to hold people to the bad decisions that they make. And this is really rampant now. And, look, cancel culture and all of the things. We just go, oh, you did that bad thing. By the way, and it's not even like a current thing. It might've been a bad thing somebody did 12 years ago or something they said or whatever. And we go off with their head. They don't deserve to be alive anymore. This horrible, and everyone's just shaming and shaming and shaming. And it breaks my heart, man, because that is not the heart of God at all. Not in my opinion. I don't think in the opinions of a lot of other people either, that is radical love. Jesus, you could say that, and people do, they say, well, he was killed because he was ultimately saying that he was God and that he was the Son of God. And, maybe that played into it, but to be perfectly honest, I think he was killed because he was really, deconstructing all that Judaism was at the time and all of these rules and regulations and things that he's like, no, you don't understand. All of that was supposed to bring us to an understanding that none is righteous, not one, and that we are all in need of this love and this grace and this forgiveness. And yet we don't practice it as a society, and it is a bummer. So that's I know I could talk for days about it, but yeah.
You need to go preach a sermon at a church somewhere.
Amen and hallelujah, baby. Let's go.
That's really good. No, honestly, Zach, when I think about it, it reminds me of the scripture, which is love your neighbor as yourself. It doesn't say love your neighbor and not yourself. And so the idea of learning to accept yourself and others, that's the words of Jesus in this new book, Radical Love. Tell me more about this book and why you wanted to write it. You even said it, you haven't lived enough years to write a full-on memoir here, but I read this book and it is an important book, my friend. It's as vulnerable and transparent of a book as I've read, and I know it's going to help a lot of people.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. It'll be interesting to see what the reception is ultimately at the end of the day, but I feel good about it. I feel like I've been trusting God through the process, and I'm going to let the chips fall where they may. But I never intended to write a book. I went through my journey. And that journey, particularly after, through this incredible life-changing, life-saving therapy, I ended up booking Shazam. And so when I was promoting that movie, I felt it was my obligation to tell people, hey, listen, yes, I got this job, but it was only because I first went and did this very important work, and work that continues, by the way. It's not fixed. I'm healing. It's a journey. It continues to go, but
Yeah.
I initiated it. And that's one of the coolest things about God is you don't have to get all the way there before God starts unlocking blessings and opportunities for you, but you do need to start going after what is right. You have to at least initiate that. If you're sitting, like God can't steer a parked car, like that kind of a situation, right? But God's not waiting for you to be perfect, but he's waiting for you to engage in your healing, in doing right by yourself and by others. And, so anyway, I get Shazam, and then I'm talking about how all of that happened on the press tour of it. And I did some podcasts, and HarperCollins, who was my publisher, they saw those and they said, hey, we think there's a book here. And, I'd have been approached before to write something before, but I had nothing to talk about. I was like, I don't know. Just because I'm a celebrity doesn't mean I have anything to say. And then when this happened, I go, okay, actually, you know what? I could talk about that, because once I went through the process, I can't stop talking about mental health, man. I really think it's the most important thing we all need to be talking about. I think that every other problem in the world, every single one, murder, rape, theft, war, environment, every issue we have across the aisle of faith and religion and politics and philosophy, every single bit of the greed at the top of industry that is leading to so much money inequality, all of the poverty of people that need all these stuff, all of that greed, all of it is rooted in some broken heart or broken mind, all of the anger, all of the fear, all of the things, the ways that we don't take care of ourselves and each other. It's all rooted in some broken part of our psyche. And so you track it back down to the source, go to the source, go back upriver. Upriver is all of these broken hearts and minds. Fix all the broken hearts and minds, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, all these other things start to get a little better. So I was like, yeah, okay, I can try and write that book. And that's ultimately what was that was the impetus for it. And then, trying to unpack it all was interesting, because I wasn't really sure, well, what is the message ultimately? What am I trying to tell people? And I really do think that at the end of the day, it's got to be this. We have got to come to the place of understanding these same things that Jesus was shouting from the rooftops, man. It doesn't, truth and wisdom, real universal truth and wisdom doesn't change. It's with us all the time. And this is a universal truth and wisdom. We can either continue to be these animalistic versions of ourselves that are all afraid, these tribal versions of ourselves that just, those people, because they're different in this way or that way or whatever, we all have these animosities. Or we can recognize, okay, hang on, we might not agree. And in fact, some of those things you're doing, we got to put an end to, or I think we need to, but let's sit down at the table and humanize each other again. Or maybe for the first time, I don't know, and just lead with love, lead with love. And when you experience hate from someone, take the time. And again, this requires us working on ourselves first. If you work on yourself first, then when somebody is hateful to you, you recognize that it's not a personal thing. It's a reflection of who they are, right? This is part of the problem. We don't work on ourselves enough. And so somebody does something and we get triggered and we're like, oh, they're a horrible person or whatever. But if we do the work on ourselves, we go, okay, oh, no, that's coming from them. And then we can see the hurt behind the hate. Mm-hmm. But if we don't do that work, we don't see the hurt behind the hate. All we see is the hate. And we don't recognize that they're just a scared, hurt person on the other side of that.
Yeah, it's powerful. Yeah. So the new book, again, Radical Love, Learning to Accept Yourself and Others, releases June 28th, 2022. Excited for it, Zach. My last question, because we only got a couple minutes left here. In the season of life that you're in right now, I love asking this question to all of our guests. Lots of exciting projects coming up. Obviously, the book, the new Shazam movie, Fury of the Gods sequel coming out at Christmas time later this year. What is God teaching you and showing you in this season of life that you're in right now? What's he showing you?
Oh, man, a lot of the same stuff.
It's in the book, right?
Yeah, look, I wrote this book. I wrote the book. Most of it was written before the pandemic and was pretty much done. I talk about it in the book. I was like, okay, cool. Like, went to therapy, did the deal, got healed. I'm good. I was fixed. So I thought, but I wasn't. because it's a journey. It's a lifetime. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's that kind of stuff. And so, then augmenting the book and recognizing that is, and then putting all that, incorporating all that, it's kind of, in some ways, I really love that I'm not, to talk about the book, or when I talk to people about the book, it's not me saying, look at what I've done, I can help you do what I did. Some of it is that, but it's a lot of it is just saying, hey, I'm still struggling with the same stuff you're struggling with, but here's some tools that I've learned that I'm applying right now in real time. And so a lot of that, like right now in this season, man, self-love is still the biggest lesson that God is trying to teach me. It's still the biggest thing that I'm trying to absorb and feel. And so much of that, as I've come to find out, like making food for myself. This might sound ridiculous, but like my whole life, my mom cooked a little bit, but she didn't really cook that much. We had a lot of like frozen burritos and stuff when we were growing up. And then I became an adult, and I was working, and I was making enough money to go eat cheap, fast food. And then I got into Hollywood, and I was making good money. And then I was able to eat at nice restaurants, and also like pay for meal delivery or whatever it was. I have always been able to insulate myself from actually taking care of myself in certain basic ways. And by the way, this is actually something I think is a huge thing, particularly nowadays. So many kids nowadays, particularly, have no idea what it means to balance their checkbook, to make food for themselves, to self-care. It's all self-care. And all of those little things are actually very paramount in understanding how to value your vessel. When you can make food for yourself, you feel an accomplishment. It's why people tell you make your bed in the morning. It's not so you have a tidier room. It's because you get your first hit of dopamine just by straightening your bed.
That's right.
And it becomes a kind of a snowball effect. You get a little more and you get a little more. You get up, you got to go brush your teeth. Oh, okay, there you go. You go wash yourself. You go put some clothes on. You go do some tasks. You go make some breakfast. All of those things are investing in you. And so this is like weird. Like I'm 40, nearly 42 years old, and I'm learning how to cook for the first time.
I love it.
But I love it. It's great. It's important for me in my process of loving myself. And I think it's important for everybody in their process. So if you don't know how to cook, go learn how to cook.
My wife will listen to this and think, okay, Jason, now it's time to listen to Zachary Levi here and go learn how to cook. So thanks, Zach. Appreciate that, buddy.
You're welcome.
Congratulations on the book, Radical Love, releasing June 28th. He is Zachary Levi. You got the new Shazam movie. We love Tangled. We love Chuck. So just love all that, the stuff that you've been a part of, and appreciate you taking some time with us here on Sports Spectrum.
Jason, thank you so much for your time, and sending lots of love and light to everybody listening right now. And we'll catch you on down the road to talk about more stuff.